Since you are 6 or 7 weeks old, you've been able to distinguish one colour from another. You've learnt to associate certain consequential results with certain colours, red fires burn and so on, until by now you're experts in colour and you have a complete range of built-in responses and associations to most colours and most combinations of colours. Largely you're unaware of this. Your eyes are remarkable instruments for seeing with. You're not conscious of them normally. They work. Often you're not conscious of the fact that they're not working quite as perhaps we would like them to. Let's begin our analysis of just what happens when we look at colour with light. On the next slide, we're going to show you, very familiar experiment, white light being split by a prism into the colours of the rainbow. All the colours of the spectrum. Not all colours. Purple doesn't appear in the rainbow or the spectrum. It's a mixture, of course, of the two colours at the ends of the spectrum. What is light? Oh, it's part of the electromagnetic spectrum, whatever that means. Certainly light has the same nature as radio waves, as we can see in this next slide, as heat waves, as X-rays and so on. But our eyes are only sensitive to a very small part of this broad spectrum of radiation. The rays which are falling on our eyes are not themselves coloured. As Newton said, the sensation of colour is produced in the brain, and our eyes are to be considered as part of our brain. They grow out of our brain when we're developing. And the sensation of colour, which varies with the particular wavelength of the light in the same way as a radio set might be tuned to different programs, so our eyes have different responses to different wavelengths. We call these responses the sensation of colour. Now let's have a look at the cross-section of the eye, which I'm sure is familiar to most of you. You'll see a lens on the left-hand side and the light-sensitive area on the right-hand side of your picture. The lens is remarkably simple. Too simple in many ways, not to be compared with a 20-pound camera. The light-sensitive surface is very different from a film. It's made up of a few million very tiny elements called rods, cones, and there are 4 distinct types. One type is sensitive to brightness only, has no colour response, and then clustered together in the very centre of the eye are a number of red, green, and blue sensitive cones. These cones, which by and large don't exist at the edges of our eye, so we don't see colour at the edges of our field of view, although you think you do. These cones are connected together by very intricate and complex connections of nerves, transparent nerves. In our next slide, we show you an enlarged view of this cross-section. The cones are the rather bright little triangles. Their connections are transparent. Light has to go through the connections to get at the light-sensitive element. And all the connections are brought back to the optic nerve, which comes backwards through the retina to our brain. And where the optic nerve pierces the retina, we are blind. We don't see black there, we're just blind there. We see nothing, which is quite different from seeing black. We need quite a good light to see black. You'll deny this, of course, but To my left eye, I can't at the moment see the top of my thumb. It's disappeared until I waggle it. This is where the optic nerve is piercing the retina. Now, the image on the back of our eye is upside down, left to right, only sharp over the very small central portion of the retina. The image moves every time I move my head, or you move your head, or every time you move your eyes. The image of the camera in front of me shoots across from one side of my retina to the other. I'm not conscious of this. The brain is automatically correcting the signals which it's getting so that I don't feel giddy, don't fall over, can recognize under very bad lighting conditions what I'm looking at and so on. Now, it's only in the last few years that we've really been able to measure the responses of the tiny cones which are responsible for color vision. Our next slide is going to show you the responses of these cones plotted against the spectrum at the bottom of the slide. You'll see a blue, a green, and an orange curve. To blue light, one set of cones is particularly sensitive. To green light, another set of cones is particularly sensitive. And to red or orange light, the third cone is particularly sensitive. This sensitivity can be used to permit us to design a color television system which is much less complicated than it would have to have been if our eye behaved in a different fashion. Now, what happens when we look at a red card? Normally we begin by shining white light onto it, as we'll show you in the next slide. White light, of course, contains most of the colors which we wish to see. And the red card absorbs some of the colors in the white light, reflects the red light. So, when we look at a red card, we really need two things. We need a light to see it by, and we need pigments in the red card to absorb those colors which we don't wish to see. This is called a subtractive process, for obvious reasons. And it's the process which is used by and large in the traditional forms of reproduction, painting, printing, and so on. The combinations of paints and pigments which we can use obey certain very definite and pretty well-known laws in their mixtures. In our next slide, we shall show you some simple combinations of these mixtures. And the only point I wish to make here is that mixing paints is very different from mixing lights. Now, in color television, we don't use this principle. We use the additive principle of reproduction. We use lights themselves. We generate lights in our cathode ray tube. We don't generate white light and subtract from it the things which we don't need. Let me now give you a simple demonstration of the basic difference between subtractive color reproduction and additive color reproduction. I take a red paintbrush and enjoy myself painting a red patch. And if I then take a green paint, fine. If I mix the two together, the result is a pretty dark shade of mud. Well, of course, just what you see there depends not only on the pigments and paints that I've used, it depends on the color of the light that's falling on the sheet, not to say on the state of your temper and one or two things such as this. Perhaps we can illustrate the importance of the light falling on the scene we're looking at by showing you a fairly exaggerated demonstration. We're going to show you the same pattern under three different types of lighting. Now, here it is under sodium street lighting, which most sodium street lamps have a little bit of neon in them, so that the sodium contributes a large amount of very narrow frequency spectrum yellow plus a little red. And if we now put over half this field, exactly the same pattern but lit by normal tungsten lighting, you'll see it looks quite different to you. We can carry the experiment a little further by going to arc lighting, which has far more blue in it, and again you get quite a different effect. Now normally, of course, one's eye is adjusting to the type of lighting. The eye is automatically trying to keep white looking white to you, whatever light is falling upon it. But the television camera doesn't automatically have this kind of control. So we have to be careful of the type of lighting under which we're judging the colour of our scenes. Well, that's subtractive reproduction. It's a kind of reproduction which is used in painting, in printing and so on. But we don't use it in television. In television we use a process called additive mixing, additive reproduction, which we begin with the primary lights, which we want, red, green and blue, and reproduce other colours with those lights. This shows you the effects of mixing various types of lights together. If we mix red light with green light, we see yellow light. Now this is very different from mixing paints, where if you remember we, with green and red paint, only succeeded in producing a mud paint. If we mix red light with blue light, we see purple, or magenta as we would call it. If we mix all three lights together, red, green and blue, all three primary lights, in the right proportions, we see white. Now, this is a process we use in colour television. I guess you won't believe me that red light really does, with green light, produce yellow light, unless you see it for real. So we fixed up a little demonstration for you over here in the studio. We begin by switching on red light. And if we now add to that red light green light, then I guess that halfway between the red light and the green light, where the proportions are about equal, you will be seeing yellow. Now let's add in some blue light. We now have our three primary lights, red, green and blue. Halfway between red and blue, you should be seeing magenta. And halfway between green and blue light, you should be seeing blue-green light, or cyan as we would call it. Cyan is an odd word, isn't it? It's from the Greek cyanos, which really means deep blue, so it's not a very good term. But this is the jargon, cyan for peacock blue, turquoise blue. If we were to wind up and down the brightness of, say, the red light, then I think we will begin to convince you that with only these three coloured lights, we can reproduce more or less any of the 2 million distinguishable surface colours by proportioning the amounts of red, green and blue correctly. Of course, in order to produce white light, we don't necessarily have to have all three red, green and blue lights. We can often produce white light with just two lights. Let's illustrate this for you. If we mix, let us say, green light with purple light, we can get white light. If we mix blue light with yellow light, we can get white light. So we call these pairs of colours complementary colours. Yellow is the complementary of blue, blue is the complementary colour to yellow. Now, not all colours look equally bright to us. In fact, some wavelengths of light we don't see at all because they're outside the visible spectrum. We have agreed as to, by measurements on a great many number of people, just how bright any one particular colour in the spectrum looks to the average viewer. And we've plotted the answer on a graph, which we're going to show you. And here you see, along the bottom of the picture, a scale representing every colour in the rainbow, and vertically we have a scale which indicates how bright, how strong the colours look to you. So you'll notice that the eye is most sensitive to greeny-yellow colours and falls off in sensitivity both to red and to blue light, until eventually, of course, as the frequency of the light changes enough, we become completely blind to it. We don't see it at all. That curve is called the photopic response of the eye for the average observer. But as well as knowing how bright various colours appear to the average viewer, we also need to know how much red, green and blue light we have to put onto your colour television screen in order to reproduce the particular colour which we wish you to see. Now we can calculate these, we can measure them, and we're going to show you now what the actual curves look like. On this picture, you'll be able to see, against a graph of wavelength along the bottom, with some of the corresponding hues put at the top of the picture, just how much red, green and blue light we need at any particular point in order to give you the impression of the colour corresponding to that wavelength along the bottom. These are called the colour mixture curves for the standard observer. Now, I've been using some words which may or may not be familiar to you, but perhaps I've been using them in a slightly unfamiliar way. We have our own jargon, of course, in colour television. We've adopted the jargon, the language, which is universal in science for describing colour and colour effects. I'd like to show you a rather simple diagram of a modern type of flower. Now, each of the petals on this flower has a different hue. At the top of the picture there's a blue hue, at the centre there's a yellow hue, bottom there's a green hue and a purple hue. Hue is the essential subjective difference between one wavelength of light and another. And I always use hue in this particular sense. It's the characteristic difference between long wavelength light and short wavelength light. Now, specifying the hue of a colour isn't sufficient to specify the colour itself completely. We need also to say what the saturation is and what the brightness is. Saturation. What does saturation mean? Let me illustrate saturation with a simple caption card which we've prepared, in which we've taken a number of patches of colour, all of the same hue, but varying in saturation. Spectral colours are very vivid colours, are completely saturated. White is completely desaturated. The more white we mix with a vivid spectral colour, the more desaturated the colours become. In colour television, we don't need to put up a caption card in order to show you colour. We can reproduce colour electronically. So we're going to put up alongside me now a red field which has never seen the light of day, so to speak, until it appears on your screen. And we can change the hue of this field from red to blue, and from blue to a green hue. What's more, we can change the saturation of this field. We can desaturate it by adding white light into it. Of course, it begins to look brighter as we add in white. And we can go on continuing this process until it looks very desaturated, a pastel green. We can subtract the white light electronically and get back to our original highly saturated green hue. Now, brightness. I've been using brightness in rather a special way. Brightness means different things to different people, but we've attempted to standardize these terms, both in science and in colour television, so that brightness to us doesn't mean what it does to a dyer, for example. In the dyeing industry, a bright dye is a very vivid dye. To us, brightness is the subjective effect of lightness or darkness. If we pour more light onto a scene, it usually looks brighter to us. We thought we'd like to illustrate this for you by going over to my office. Now, here's my hard-working secretary. We're going to make her look less bright to you. Well, she's a very bright girl, really, but we're going to close down the iris on the lens so that less light comes into the camera. We are now seeing a less bright picture. We can produce a brighter picture for you by allowing more light into the camera lens by opening up the iris. Now we're back to a pretty normal brightness. We'll do it again. We'll go down in brightness, and we'll go up in brightness. Now, if I was talking scientifically using objective measurements, I would be referring to the luminance of the scene. And we have similar objective terms for brightness and saturation, but normally we're talking about the effect on the viewer. So we use the subjective terms hue, saturation, brightness. We also have a way of talking about the color of the light which is falling on the scene. We've already illustrated to you how important this can be, but let's illustrate to you how we measure it. We measure it in degrees Kelvin. On this slide, you'll see a series of colored patches. The reddy colored patches represent a low color temperature. Our studio lights are operating at around about 3,000 Kelvin. An overcast daylight sky would probably be round about 6,000 or 7,000 Kelvin, and the light from a blue sky might be as high as 12,000, 13,000 Kelvin. Color temperature. Very important in color television that we try and keep to a constant color temperature for transmission, because the color cameras, unlike the human eye, don't automatically compensate for the amount of red light or the amount of blue light in the illumination on the scene. I'd like to talk to you now about the eye and subjective effects. The brain works overtime at trying to produce sense out of the often jumbled and incoherent signals which the eye is sending to it. Often it succeeds, occasionally it doesn't. I'd like to begin by talking about metamerism. Now that's a fine word, metamerism. Has a corresponding adjective, metameric. But basically, all I'm talking about is the inability of the eye to be quite sure of the constituent colors of a mixture. Or I guess all of us, if we're trying to match, say, thread to a piece of material in the store, prefer to walk over to natural daylight in order to judge the match. This is because we've learnt that two things which match under sunshine may not match under indoor light, and so on. We have a caption to illustrate this for you. These two colors at the top of your picture look exactly the same to the average person in sunlight. But if we take them indoors and look at them under artificial light, they look different. Now, the same thing happens with the television camera. So we have a problem which we always have to be careful with. Things aren't always what they seem. Of course, not everybody sees colors in precisely the same way. Or very few people are colorblind, 0.01% of the population. But quite a lot of men, at any rate, have anomalous color vision. That's to say, their color vision is not quite the same as the average person's. There are various tests which one can carry out for this. I'm holding a little rule in my hand which is called a D&H rule. It consists of two slides with various colors on each slide, rather like a slide rule. And we ask people to adjust the slides until the two colors which appear in the little frame appear identical to them. If people's color vision is not quite normal, then they set a different position on the two slides from most people. Again, having matched this D&H rule under one kind of illumination, if we take it over to a different kind of illumination, the match looks quite different. It's a fine example of metamerism. It's necessary to talk a little bit about color blindness to you, of course. Hardly any women are color blind, so don't argue with women over color for many reasons. 1 in 10 men have something wrong with their vision. A very famous test for color vision, a Japanese doctor invented it, is the Ishihara test. Ishihara, if I can spell it, Ishihara. It's a book. On each page of the book is a circular pattern of little colored dots. Let's show you a sample page from it. I hope all of you can read the number 12 in the center. It's designed to be visible even to people who are completely colorblind. But for Once we've sorted out you're not actually completely blind, we will show you another page and ask you to read the number in it. Now, depending on whether your vision is anomalous or not, you would read the correct number or an incorrect number, because the various shades in the little blobs on the picture are designed to be apparent to people with one kind of vision, not to another. And if we show you a third sample, I'll leave you to tell me whether there's a number there or not. So much for colour blindness. The eye has one or two effects which sometimes bother us and sometimes don't bother us. For example, it cannot focus red and blue light at once. This is rather strange in some ways. Let's illustrate this with a diagram for you. The blue light is brought to a focus in front of the retina, and red light is brought to a focus further back. So if we adjust our eye in order to see a red image sharply, then a blue image in the same plane looks unsharp. And for this reason, red and blue patterns can be very disturbing to some people in whom this effect is more marked than it is in others. Of course, the eye, by and large, is attempting to adapt itself so as to overcome this effect. The brain and the eye, as a combination, very complicated, and they're all the time working to overcome their own deficiencies. In fact, someone once said that what you see is really the brain's best guess as to what it is out there in front of you. We have to correct for perspective the fact that a man at 100 yards looks a lot smaller than he does at 3 feet, but we know he's the same size, and so we have built-in corrections for this. Sometimes the brain's programming, use modern computer terminology, fails. Optical illusions are a prime example of this. I guess you've all seen an optical illusion of this kind before, and you won't be surprised, of course, if I assure you that the circle in the center really is a circle. It may not look it for several reasons. I'm hoping it doesn't look a circle only because of the slanting lines which are behind it. But I guess perhaps your television receivers may be distorting a little as well. Now, this is a very simple optical illusion. One can devise much more complicated ones, as in this slide. This is obviously a picture of a spiral, isn't it? No, it isn't. They're really a series of concentric circles, but they're presented to you in a rather unusual fashion, and the brain is attempting to analyze this picture with one of its standard programs, one of its standard corrective procedures, and isn't succeeding. So the circles end up looking like spirals to you. The brain gets up to a lot of processing tricks of this kind, not always successfully. Let me give you another example. This is a tin of Boris's baked beans. The contents have absolutely no distinguishing feature apart from their peculiar pea-green colour. And the packaging experts have attempted to get an emotive connection between the colour of the packaging and the colour of the contents. And they very much hope that having shown this to you on television for 15 seconds or so, as soon as you walk into the supermarket, you will recognise this product by the particular green colour of the pack. So let's take you into the supermarket. You've remembered the green colour, of course, haven't you, very precisely. Was it this green colour, or was it that green colour? It's not very long ago you looked at the pack, is it? I wonder which green colour you've decided it was. Well, perhaps you've realised that I'm attempting to trick you. In fact, the green patches I was showing you are both exactly the same. And I guess neither of them really are exactly the colour that was on the pack. Well, this is an example of simultaneous contrast where the impression of colour which the eye is getting is affected by the surround colour. And it's affected in a way which enhances the difference between the colours. But there's another form of correction which the eye often puts in, which it puts in when fine detail is seen against a coloured background. This is called assimilation. We can show you an example of this. Here are the letters A and B against precisely the same coloured grey background. I imagine that the grey behind the letter A looks rather more yellow to you than the grey behind the letter B. This is because the colour of the yellow A is bleeding into the background, is being assimilated into the background. The colour grey behind the letter B is getting a bleed from the blue colour assimilation. Two effects which vary depending upon the size of the pattern which we're looking at. Another effect is that the eye doesn't resolve detail equally well in all colours. We're normally not too conscious of this for a number of reasons, but if we take a test pattern consisting of a number of fine black and white lines, you might care to look along this pattern and find a set of black and white lines in which you can just resolve the separate lines from where you're sitting. It will depend, of course, on how close you are to your television set. And having found a small section where the lines are just distinguishable, we'll switch off the red and blue guns, leaving just the green picture there. And you can probably still resolve the lines in that particular patch you're looking at. On the other hand, if we switch off the green gun and only put up the red image to you, then I imagine you can't see any longer the bright and dark lines in that pattern. And if we put up the blue picture only, I imagine there's very little detail you can resolve from a normal viewing distance. Well now, we don't resolve all colours equally. We use this effect in designing our colour television system. What the eye doesn't see, the colour engineer needn't grieve over. And in fact, we tailor the system specifically to suit human vision. The same thing really goes to some of our graphics work. Not all colours provide suitable effects for letters against coloured backgrounds. Some colour combinations of letters on backgrounds are more easily read than others. We can show you an example of a high legibility combination, black on yellow, very easy to read, even when one is some distance away from the receiver. Let's go through a number of combinations. Of course, fine serifs, for example, on the letters are also usually wasted. And perhaps the worst combination of all is blue on red, particularly when they're at about the same brightness, because the compatible picture suffers. The black and white picture is also illegible. So much for the legibility of letters. We can, in fact, demonstrate to you a number of these peculiar aberrations of the eye, of which I'd like to stress one particularly to you, and that is contrast. It's a form of optical illusion, really, which I wish to show you. We can go to a picture now. This is a picture designed to show you that our ability to distinguish changes in brightness in any one particular colour is rather different from our ability to distinguish colours in small areas. I guess most of you can see that there are some lines across this white card. Perhaps not all of you, depending on how far away you are from the sets, can be quite sure about the colours of each individual line. Maybe you can see that the colours on the left-hand thin lines are lighter or different at any rate from the colours on the right-hand side. But I imagine it's not until we put up some larger patches of the same threads of wool that you'll be able to be quite sure about the colours in the threads. So what we see depends upon the size of the objects and scenes we're looking at. Now, television, unfortunately, is essentially a small-scale reproduction system. Even if you have a 25-inch colour receiver at home, you are still seeing a small picture. It may surprise you to know that a piece of card some 6 inches by 4.5 inches, rather smaller than the average paperback, when held at arm's length from your normal viewing position, will usually obliterate the picture completely. In television, we're dealing with small pictures, and we mustn't be surprised if effects which are very satisfactory on a large scale are sometimes disappointing on a small scale. Or I'm harping, of course, on the deficiencies of the system and of our eye. You know that colour television really works beautifully. You've already seen some fine examples. But nevertheless, let me continue with a list of things which can go wrong, and if we're prepared for them, I guess we can usually overcome them. Now, here's a pattern I'd like you to stare at. There's a white spot in the middle. Would you fixate on it? That's to say, would you stare at it without blinking, without moving your eyes? And I'll continue to blather to you for some 7 seconds or so. This is the tail end of a commercial. We have a particularly vivid brand image which we're getting over to you. And we suddenly cut from the end of that commercial to the opening of a new commercial. And now if you look at the black spot in the center of the screen, after a short pause of 3/4 of a second or so, a new image begins to build up, although in fact your screen is pretty blank. This is because the eye has adapted itself to the previously strong image, and you're seeing, I imagine, the familiar RAF rondel, the complementary colours to the pattern which I showed you. There's another effect which I ought to talk to you about, because this effect really is subjective. In fact, they're called the subjective colours. It's an effect which was discovered by a Benedictine monk in, of all places, his wine cellars. He happened to notice that as he moved a piece of white card through a shaft of sunlight, it appeared coloured to him. A very brave decision on his part, considering the circumstances of the experiment. But if I rotate this black and white pattern at a rate of 7 or 8 revolutions a second, most people see coloured effects. If I reverse the direction of rotation, the coloured effects change over. Now, this has been used for advertising on monochrome television. It has the advantage with colour television that you can use it to enhance a real colour effect in the studio and still give the viewer on the black and white receiver some sort of colour effect. Now, I've shown you these various demonstrations separately. Sometimes they occur in combinations of 2 or 3 at a time. Have a look at this pattern. I have to point out to you that these coloured patches at the top were cut from the same pieces of paper as the little patches which are underneath them, so that all these patches are the same as this large patch at the top. Similarly, these patches are the same as this colour here. Maybe you would all agree with this. However, if I tilt the card very slowly and gently so that the size of the patches at the bottom begins to decrease to you, I guess, depending on where you're sitting, there comes a point where the little patches at the bottom of the picture look very different from the big patches at the top of the picture. Now, in fact, the surrounds to a picture do really have a dominating effect on what we see. We're going to show you now an optical illusion with which you're all, I'm sure, familiar. The 2 grey patches at the bottom of the picture are, of course, precisely the same grey, although I guess the one with the white surround looks darker than the one with the black surround. Similarly, the red against a white background looks different from the red against a black background. This effect of contrast due to the surround is operating, of course, on all colours, all shades of grey, all tone. It's rather important because there's a difference in looking at television pictures compared with looking at film in the cinema. Now, in this picture, we are showing you a grayscale, 2 identical grayscales. I assure you they were cut from the same piece of gelatine. On the left-hand side of your picture, we're showing it to you against a grey background. On the right-hand side, we're showing it to you against a black background. And I'm quite sure they look very different to you. In fact, we can say in more technical terms that the contrast law of the eye goes up by a factor of 1 to 1.5 with a light surround around the picture. So there's a basic difference between looking at films in the dark cinema, looking at films on television, or indeed looking at any television picture. So please don't criticize our magnificent colour television pictures unless you're quite sure that you're looking at them under the right conditions. Now, there are a number of effects which arise with colour, which are not really physiological but psychological. We've learned to associate certain conditions, certain moods, certain affectations with various colours. For example, we normally say that blue recedes and red advances. This isn't always true, but often it is, as you can see, I think, in this picture of Lake Geneva. There are very good reasons why some of these associations have arisen, of course. Another example is that black objects, even when they're precisely the same dimensions as white objects, usually look closer, smaller, and heavier. It's odd, isn't it? We also have a number of built-in responses to various situations, which end up with working the other way round. In the United Kingdom, we associate whiteness with virginity, with weddings, as in this picture. But our Pakistani population associates white with funerals. So although we need to be aware of these social connotations of colour, we have to be very careful as to just how we apply them. Now, we can try and simplify the situation a little by taking colour singly rather than in rather complex combinations. If you were asked the very simple question, which is your favourite colour considered in isolation, I wonder how you'd answer me. I can tell you how you'd answer me statistically on average because it's been very well documented. Everybody prefers blue. By everybody, I mean that unlike the association of white with weddings, Eskimos, West Indians, Europeans prefer blue more than any other colour. It's run a very close second by red, followed by green, followed by purple, orange, and finally, not even the Japanese like yellow. I should perhaps say that our tastes vary a little as we grow up. Children, I think by and large, prefer red to blue for the most popular colour, and then change over to blue when they're a little older, around about 15 or 16 or so. Now, this is a very simple artificial situation I've talked about, a single colour in isolation. Nevertheless, people do tend to talk about the moods associated with various colours, and indeed colours associated with various moods. I know one character who insists that Tuesdays are always purple to him. Now, some American psychologists, for better or worse, have attempted to analyse the reactions of theatre audiences to scenes in various colours. And from their results, we can plot this mood wheel. You'll notice that yellow colours are associated with a playful mood. Cyan and green colours are associated with a leisurely mood, and so on. And of course, as we make the colours darker, everybody agrees that the general overall effect is rather more sombre. Oh, well, I'm not sure how much attention you can pay to those kinds of results. Certainly, we've been attempting to draw up a few guidelines for designers in their use of colour, I think very unsuccessfully. The psychologists have done a lot of work, have attempted to produce rules such as one likes colour combinations with which one's familiar, one likes colour combinations in which one can see the logic of the combination. Our acceptance of a colour combination is enhanced if we've been shown something which we actively dislike and so on. But I guess these are rules which any first-year art student could have told us if we'd bothered to ask them. Well, so much for the physiology and the psychology of colour. Let's have a look at the mechanics of the television system itself.